I never believed that a single moment could split your life into a before and an after. Not in the dramatic, movie scene way people talk about, but quietly, without warning, like a breath you didn't realize you were holding until it was gone. That day on the bus, I boarded with nothing more than exhaustion clinging to me, my thoughts tangled in errands and deadlines, unaware that I was about to carry a memory that would refuse to fade. The bus was crowded in that familiar way, people packed together but worlds apart. The air smelled faintly of rain and warm fabric. I took the first empty seat I saw, by the window, pressing my forehead lightly against the glass as the city blurred past. My reflection stared back at me, tired eyes, a face that had learned how to hide disappointment behind routine. I had no expectations for that ride. None at all. At the next stop, he stepped on. There was nothing dramatic about his entrance. No sudden silence. No turning heads. Just a man holding the rail as the bus lurched forward, his jacket slightly damp from the drizzle outside. He stood closer than I would have preferred, but space was a luxury none of us had. I shifted my bag to my lap, instinctively guarding my space, and tried to ignore the unfamiliar presence beside me. But something about him made that impossible. It wasn't his looks, not exactly. It was the way he carried himself, quiet, observant, like someone who noticed details others rushed past. His gaze wasn't intrusive, yet I could feel it flicker briefly toward me, then away, as if he'd caught himself looking too long. When our eyes accidentally met, he gave a small, apologetic smile. Not confident. Not rehearsed. Just human. The bus rattled over a pothole, and I nearly lost my balance. Without thinking, he steadied me with a gentle hand hovering just close enough to help, never crossing a line. "Sorry," he murmured, though it wasn't his fault at all. His voice was calm, low, grounding in a way that surprised me. We didn't speak after that, not right away. The city continued its rhythm around us. Traffic lights, storefronts, strangers stepping on and off. But the silence between us felt different. Charged, yet restrained. Like something waiting for permission to exist. A few stops later, the bus slowed abruptly, throwing us forward again. This time, I laughed under my breath, an unplanned, nervous sound. He glanced down at me amused. "This route is always like this," he said. "Keeps you alert." I nodded, unsure why my heart was suddenly beating faster. "I guess it does." That should have been the end of it. A brief exchange between strangers. Forgettable. But instead, the conversation unfolded naturally, cautiously, like we were both aware of an invisible boundary and determined not to cross it, yet curious enough to stand near it. We talked about small things at first. The weather. The bus schedule. How unpredictable the city had become. But slowly, without realizing it, the words carried more weight. He mentioned how he took this bus every evening after work, how it gave him time to think. I admitted that I often rode longer routes just to avoid going home too quickly, as if delaying something unnamed. There was no judgment in his response. Just understanding. At one point, he asked, "Do you ever feel like life moves faster than you can keep up with?" The question landed deeper than I expected. I hesitated, then answered honestly. "All the time." Something softened in his expression then. Not pity. Recognition. The bus grew quieter as evening settled in. Streetlights flickered on, casting reflections across the windows. I noticed how close we were standing now, how aware I'd become of the space between us, or the lack of it. Yet there was nothing inappropriate, nothing rushed. Just a shared awareness that felt intimate in a way words couldn't explain. When my stop approached, a strange reluctance settled in my chest. I didn't want the conversation to end, didn't want to step back into the version of my life that felt so heavy compared to this fleeting connection. As the bus slowed, I gathered my things, forcing myself to stand. "Well," I said quietly, "this is me." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "It was nice talking to you." "Yeah," I replied. It really was. I stepped off the bus, the cool air brushing against my skin. For a moment, I thought that would be it, that I'd walk away carrying nothing but a pleasant memory. But before the doors closed, I heard him call out my attention, not my name, just a soft, hesitant, "Hey." I turned back. "If you ever take this route again," he said, almost uncertain, "maybe we'll talk more." I smiled. Maybe. The door shut. The bus pulled away. I stood there longer than necessary, watching the red lights disappear into traffic. My heart felt unsteady, like I'd just woken from a dream I wasn't ready to leave. I told myself it was nothing. Just a stranger. Just a conversation. But that night, as I lay in bed, his words replayed in my mind, his presence lingering like an echo. Days passed. Then weeks. And yet, I found myself choosing that bus route again, telling myself it was convenience, not hope. I boarded at the same stop, around the same time, my expectations carefully muted. Some days, he wasn't there. Other days, the bus was too full, faces blurring together. I began to wonder if that moment had been a one-time crossing of paths, never meant to repeat. Then one evening, there he was, standing in the same spot, holding the same rail. He looked up, surprised, then smiled, a genuine, unmistakable smile that made my chest tighten. "You came back," he said. "So did you," I replied. That second conversation felt easier. Warmer. Like picking up a sentence we'd paused rather than ended. We talked more openly this time about work, about choices we'd made and the ones we still questioned. There was a shared honesty between us, careful but real. Neither of us spoke about boundaries, but both of us respected them, navigating the connection with quiet discipline. Yet emotions don't always follow rules. I noticed the way his presence affected me, the way my shoulders relaxed when he stood nearby, the way my thoughts lingered on our conversations long after the ride ended. I sensed the same awareness in him, the restraint layered over something deeper. It was unspoken, but it was there. One evening, the bus broke down unexpectedly. Passengers groaned, some stepping off to call rides. We remained seated, sharing an amused glance at the inconvenience. Time stretched. The city hummed around us. "This feels oddly familiar," he said. "Like the universe slowing things down on purpose." I smiled, though the thought unsettled me. "Or testing us." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment, the world outside seemed distant. Maybe both. When the bus finally resumed, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier this time, charged with everything we weren't saying. When my stop arrived, I stood, hesitating longer than before. "Take care," he said softly. "You too." I stepped off, but this time I didn't look back. That night, I understood something I'd been avoiding. Some encounters aren't meant to turn into something more, not because they lack potential, but because they exist to remind you that you're still capable of feeling, of connecting, of being seen. The stranger on the bus didn't change my life in the way stories often promise. He didn't sweep me away or rewrite my future. But he changed something inside me. He reminded me that moments matter. That restraint can be as powerful as action. That some connections are meant to stay suspended in memory, not because they were incomplete, but because they were perfect exactly as they were. And even now, when I ride that bus, I still glance toward the door at each stop, not expecting him, but remembering the version of myself who once boarded with no expectations and left forever changed.